Welcome to the Everyday Citizens Tactical Podcast, Episode 10, Questions and Answers. As always, my name is Jeremy and I will be your host. Today, I will be answering all of the questions you guys asked on Instagram prior to recording this episode. This will be something we plan to do every 10 episodes as we want to hear from all of our podcast and social media supporters. With that, I'd like to thank all of you for listening and your continuous support. So, let's begin.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to the podcast. We've made it. We've made it all the way to 10 episodes, and we are still going strong. Like I said in the intro, guys, I really want to thank all of you guys for continuing to listen, continuing to support us, not just here on the podcast, but on social media, specifically stuff like Instagram. We keep fighting the bans, and we keep coming back. And I see a lot of the same faces over and over again. And I just want to thank all of you guys for that kind of support, especially the guys that continuously share my content, give me the shout outs and, have helped me along the way. You guys are the best. So today we're going to be taking a little play out of the Undesirable Individuals podcast book. Shout out to Max and Tanner. We're going to be doing some questions and answers. And for this one today, I'm just by myself. And I have not done a podcast episode by myself since the very first episode that we did. So this may be a little bit more awkward than some of our other podcast episodes. It's a lot easier when you have somebody else you're talking to, because normally you don't have to, talk the entire time. You don't go down rabbit holes. You kind of get breaks and pauses to think and whatnot. But today, we're just gonna shoot from the hip, see where this goes. As a kind of a general talking point before we get into the questions, I kind of wanted to update everybody about, what the company's doing, how have we been, what's on our minds, all that kind of stuff. Because we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of, being officially a company. I say we a lot, even though there's really only me and a couple other guys behind the scenes that either help me with classes or content or stuff like that. But I want to give everybody a little update. I'll definitely do a more official YouTube video once we get closer to the 1-year mark. But this felt like an appropriate time to give everybody kind of updates. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about was social media. Obviously, I have been fighting social media hard. Not only have we lost the business account 3 times in 2022, I myself have lost all of my personal followers from my Bluegrass account. Thousands and thousands and thousands of followers and friends that I've never been able to re-find, and content that I've made lost, and so on and so forth. It's definitely difficult, and I'm not the only one that has to deal with this, and it seems like a lot of us aren't even posting content that seems extreme or is not right for Instagram. I think at this point a lot of us are kind of just caught up in an algorithm ban, or something to do with our geolocations and something like that, because I've changed complete routers and modems for my Wi-Fi here at home, and I've changed devices and so on and so forth, yet we just continue to get kind of trapped into things. So I'm doing a couple things new on my end to hopefully escape that constant circle of bans that we've been stuck in this year, which really sucks, but hopefully we can move past that. As far as products and classes go, guys, because I get a lot of messages about this kind of stuff, as a general reminder, we do the Minuteman patches, both the old and the modern. We have, various apparel items, which we will be coming out with something new here right at the beginning of fall. And then we have the IFACs. We had the plans for the IFAC Pluses at the beginning of the year, but unfortunately, I tried to do something good and work with a small business guy to get these pouches, because I had designed custom pouches for these IFAC Plus materials, these things I had made up. And, he fell through on that, and he kind of left us in the dirt, and that project kind of got left behind. But we still have our normal trauma IFACs that we have made with partnering with North American Rescue, comes vacuum sealed, all that kind of good stuff. So we still have those, and we recently got a new shipment of those. So we have lots of IFACs in stock as of the time of this recording. So, with that being said, yeah, I have some ideas for products and whatnot, but there's a lot of things that go into that a lot of people don't think about. Not only is money a factor, and trust me, money is a factor, but so is finding either people to produce your item and the logistics behind that, or you purchasing said equipment to create said product, and trial and error and all of this kind of stuff. So it is a very long process, and that's why I didn't move forward with the original IFAC Pluses, because I got a bunch of pouches, but they weren't good. They weren't identical. They weren't to spec on how we designed them and the prototypes that we had gone through and so on and so forth. And I don't think it is right to just push a product to try to make money. It's not why we're here. Whether it's our social media content, products, classes, all of this is made to be a true difference in a sense. We're not out here to just make money. We're trying to change culture and influence, movement forward and so on and so forth. And, being cheap and stuff like that is not the way forward with all that. So will there be more products in the future? Maybe, maybe not. If there's a gap in the market and we can fill it, we'll do so. But there's a lot of companies doing a lot of good stuff right now. And I just don't see us being heavy on the product side. The products side of stuff, really heavily helps us with either getting stuff to create better social media content or, getting stuff to put on classes, which brings me to my next point is the classes. We've done a few of the Medical Response 1 classes this summer, which all went well, even though we were fighting constant social media bans every single time we posted signups. Like right now, our website link, for whatever reason, including the Linktree link, is not allowed on Instagram. Instagram has banned our website. Our YouTube link is still allowed for some reason, which is why you'll find that in our Instagram bio. But, that hurts stuff. That hurts, people getting to our website and looking at products. That hurts people trying to find class dates and so on and so forth. But as far as classes go, we've done the Medical Response 1 classes this summer. I'm trying to schedule some more for the late fall and the beginning of winter, trying to get outside of my local area and kind of span out a little bit more over the region, so we can hopefully do that. And then come 2023, world events and resources in mind, hopefully we will be doing some firearms related classes. Everybody and their mother does firearms classes. Everybody does pistol classes, rifle classes, MG classes, whatever it may be. It's just, can I provide, and whatever instructors is doing it with me, can we provide an experience, a knowledge set, a skill that puts us, sets us aside from what everybody else is already doing? Because that is the name of the game. When this all comes down to all this, you're trying to do something better or differently in a positive manner than everybody else is doing it. So hopefully next year classes look up a little bit. Things are getting tight financially for a lot of people. And that is just kind of part of the game as well. And I'm sure lots of companies are feeling it right now as far as that kind of stuff goes. People don't have $200-300 to go sign up for a 10-hour, pistol course or a 2-day rifle course or whatever it may be. So we keep that kind of stuff in mind. A lot of people have told me that we should look at reevaluating the cost of our Medical Response 1 class, and that it's worth more for a 6-hour class. But in my mind, I'm like, this doesn't require a ton of money to run this class. It's meaningful information. And as it stands right now, I want people to have that resource for learning and whatnot. Is that to say that prices of anything may never change? No, that's not what I'm saying. But, as it stands, I want things to be as affordable and accessible to people as possible. And, the market, times, all that kind of stuff, that dictates a lot of that. So that's kind of what's going on with, ECT right now. If you guys haven't noticed yet, if you're not over on the YouTube side, we just started the Modern Minuteman series. We're 2 episodes into that. That is basically going to be a long series of covering tons and tons of topics. It'll never end, of things that have to do with, creating, training, maintaining the idea of what the modern Minuteman is now. I have probably the next 12 to 15 episodes of that series planned out. It's just a matter of finding the time, the resources to do so, because I want it to be a well put together series. And I'm going to try to get other people in on the YouTube channel as guests to help me present a lot of that information, or bring other pieces of gear or weapons or whatever it may be to the table, so everybody can, get a taste of different things. So that's what's going on the ECT front, guys. Let's dive into these questions, because we are about 10 minutes in now, and I've just been running my mouth. So we've got about somewhere between 15 and 20 questions to answer here. So the very first question is planning food for organized groups and Minutemen. So that kind of can get broken down into two parts. When you think about organized groups, that could be family preparedness groups, mutual assistance groups, or otherwise known as MAGs, stuff like that. And then you look at the Minutemen, and that could be something entirely different. All MAGs could be Minutemen, but not all. I'm sorry, all Minutemen could be MAGs, but not all MAGs are Minutemen. So let's break this down into two sides of this. On the preparedness side, guys, this is a never-ending cycle of tasks to be completed. But, with the prepper side, you have dry food storage, you have canned goods in your short shelf life goods, you have stuff in your freezers like meat, cheese, butters, all that kind of stuff. We could talk about preparedness in food for probably 2 or 3 hours. We really could. We have some YouTube videos up on our YouTube channel about different food preparedness stuff. But on the Minuteman side, it's a little different, because you're not able to just, maybe openly cook in a field or anything like that. You need more MRE style foods in some cases. Not all, but in some cases, if you're thinking like a response type case. But not necessarily MREs. One of my favorite things to do is to go to any store and get like the Uncle Ben's rice, the packs of tuna or chicken, and then get things like granola bars, Cliff bars, whatever that may be, classics side stuff that is, very heavily calorie dense. Put all that in a big Ziploc baggie with condiments like little salt and pepper packets, hot sauce, silverware, whatever it may be, if you don't run like normal metal, titanium, whatever spork in the field. And then I get all of the air out of that, or you could vacuum seal it, and now you have not as long as of a shelf life as MREs are, but you have meals that require little to no preparation that you can eat. And that is a cheaper way of doing backpack food than buying MREs. Another route you have is freeze-dried foods. Freeze-dried foods only require boiling water, and some say, you can just do it without boiling water. But that still requires a lot of water to prepare that food. Freeze-dried food is very light. I love freeze-dried foods, and there's a lot of meals that I personally like, and I've had a lot of different flavors, meals, so on and so forth. So the Mountain House is my favorite brand as it stands right now. However, that kind of stuff can get expensive. So let's talk about the actual planning portion of the food. You need to sit down and create a plan just like you would for anything else. All right, how many people do I have? What is the time frame I am trying to sustain this group of people at? What is the age differences? What is, X, Y, Z, all of this. Now, when it comes to planning that kind of stuff, I always plan when it comes to food preparedness on the basis of a general military age male. Some guys are like, oh, my 7-year-old daughter won't eat 2,500 calories today. No, she won't. But if you plan everybody to be a military age meal, you may always have enough food or more food than you really need. So you analyze your group, ages, how many people, so on and so forth. How long do you need to sustain those people for? Are you planning to sustain that group of people for 30 days, 3 months, 3 years? What other factors do you have, into it? Do guys have gardens? Or do you have homesteaders? Do guys have chickens and eggs, pigs, whatever it may be? And that's another part of it, is all of your food coming from shelf food, dried food, packaged food? Are you gardening? Do you have active, canned food like mason jar style that you got from the year, or vegetables that you may have vacuum sealed and froze? Are you getting eggs every day from chickens? All this kind of stuff is going to go into that. And again, we can talk about that for hours. But you need to sit down and plan all of that around your specific circumstances. I can't sit up here and be like, this is what you need for this amount of days for this many people. Because it's going to vary so much person to person because there's so many contributing factors. Maybe that'll definitely be a video in this series. It's not one that's planned at the moment, but that'll be a Minuteman series video for sure. Another question. Thoughts on large-scale mesh radio networks? Is this a good idea for militias? Shout out to you, Max. That's a good question. So the thing you have to remember with radios, and then this is really, militias aside, is what type of comms you're operating on will heavily dictate this answer. If your group runs all analog radios, whether it's Baofangs or not Baofangs, your security side of all of this is pretty much in the toilet. Anybody can hear you, even without a scanner. You can be found, you can be listened to, so on and so forth. You can listen to everybody else and find everybody else as well, sure. But you have to take security into the aspect of this. The other part about this is infrastructure. What type of radios are we talking about? Are we talking about everybody has VHF radios or UHF radios, on their kit, and everybody's programmed to the same frequencies, same encryption if you're on like the digital side and you're encrypting and whatnot? Or are we talking about HF radios and everybody has ham stations set up in their house, so on and so forth? So that is definitely going to be a big one as far as it goes for like the militia side. Absolutely, or the Minutemen, the more organized community response groups, whatever you identify yourself as. I think using the word network is extremely important because that is what you're doing. You're creating a network, a comms network, which comes with a comms plan, which comes with OPSEC, and so on and so forth. In reality, if we lose power, cell towers go down in your region, whatever it may be, natural disaster, Russians are here, whatever, government's smacking you on the rear end because you didn't listen to COVID policies, whatever it is, having radios that do not run on your normal house electric will provide you and everybody in your group with the ability to continue to communicate, so long as you will have that network and those capabilities and that infrastructure established prior to. It's one thing to get all of that gear, put it in a tub somewhere and be like, yep, whenever things happen, we'll set this up. But having it, pre-staged if possible, or practice setting that stuff up on a normal basis is going to be huge. The other thing you got to think about is cost. Drink your water, kids. The other thing you got to think about that is cost, because radio equipment can get really expensive really fast outside of, a personal handheld radio. Because when I talk about infrastructure, that may mean, antenna systems and scanners. That may be tough books that run programs to, help you operate and set up all these radios. And there's just a lot of stuff that goes into that. Sorry guys, that's my pager for the firehouse. It's decided to go absolutely nuts. There's a fire odor. Anyway, yeah, so there's a big cost sense that is going to go into all of that. So that's just something you have to consider. But definitely create networks of comms, so on and so forth. Everybody starts, analog on the Baofeng end, so on and so forth. But eventually you need to move forward off of that. Let's see. Alternative transportation methods. So this is a good one because in today's day and age, this is not as practical in my mind as a lot of people may think. Everybody always thinks that they're going to find a bunch of horses, a bunch of donkeys, mules, whatever it is. Don't ride donkeys, get mules. And just start cowboying it up and running across the hills. Or everybody's going to ride bicycles everywhere, or so on and so forth. If you're not in cars, trucks, anything like that, runs off gas or diesel, more than likely you're not going anywhere. If you're a network of guys and you live, in the mountains in Wyoming and whatnot, you're all cowboys, yeah, you could probably do something like that. But you and your, suburban friends are not going to just randomly acquire horses and understand anything that has to do with, horsemanship or packing or any of that kind of stuff. Let alone are horses going to be or mules going to be fit and capable to do what you think that they're going to do. You're not just going to ride 15, 20 miles every single day running ops while they're carrying hundreds of pounds of gear and all that kind of stuff. Me and old Willard, Squibblo Tactical, we talked about that a couple of podcast episodes back towards the beginning. Horses and mules are not what they once were. They, just like everything else, have become weaker generation to generation through breeding. Are there some horses that still kick it like the old ones? Yes, but the majority of horses, no. Then you got bikes. Let's talk about bicycles. Bicycles also are not going to do what you think they can do. Like, you're not going to get on a bike in full kit with your rifle and just expect to ride 15, 20, 30 miles every day. Like, that's going to be extremely physically exhausting, especially if you are not conditioned to ride a bike. Could it be done riding a bike? Sure, but I think about my area, Kentucky. I mean, it's just hollers and hills everywhere, and you're really not taking those bikes off road, especially if it's not an off-road bike. So, alternative transportation methods is an iffy one if we're not talking about gas and diesel. There wasn't a lot more context with this question. I'm trying to think of other ways to think about alternative transportation methods. Yeah, if it don't run on gas or diesel, I can't think of anything else besides horses and bicycles that people would even commonly consider a transportation method. You're going to be doing a lot of walking. Everybody doesn't realize how much walking you're about to start doing if you ever get into a situation like this. This is also just a good note to remind you that you need to put fuel cans to the side. I don't suggest that you put 45-gallon gas cans in your garage and stack them to the ceiling. That is not safe. But having at least a tank's worth of gas off to the side in your garage, safely stored, is a good thing to have. If your personal rule is always to have your vehicle never fall below a quarter tank or a half tank, and you have a full tank of gas at home, you're sitting pretty good when it comes to, bad stuff kicking off, SHTF, whatever it may be. You're already sitting ahead of the curve. So keep that in mind. How to remain low presence on the internet but remain effective. I feel like whoever asked this, I asked for context. I'm going to answer this how I take this because I never went back through and added the context to this question. When I think low presence, I think, avoiding the algorithm bans or maybe even officials from noticing you and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, it's kind of hard at this point in time to be an attention getter, because everything trips algorithms these days. The entire internet is regulated by algorithms in one way or another. But just as everybody always does, you have to be able to continue to push messages and the propaganda and all that kind of stuff that promotes you in a sense. So avoiding hashtags, maybe certain words, so on and so forth, will help with that. But even like your images and videos that you put up now, that stuff is scanned by bots and algorithms that do all types of weird computer work behind the scenes. So it's really hard to keep a low presence on the internet while doing things to influence others, I should say. It's hard to do these days. Any networking with other local groups, contingency plans? So this is something my local guys, we've been trying to do more as of recent, is reach out to other local groups. Back in the day, I say back in the day, like 2 years ago, we had a couple other little local groups that were around us that we talked with on a normal basis, but they have since faded. Without being too specific, there are other, I would say, more regional or outside regional groups that we're trying to become associated with, but we are not officially associated or networking with any other groups at this point. But it's definitely something you should do, and you should have some sort of relationship established with other groups, specifically those outside of your immediate area, because that will benefit you in the long term. Let's even just think about like a natural disaster response at this point. Let's say you live on the east side of Arkansas, and there's a natural disaster on the west side of Arkansas, and you guys want to go help, but you know absolutely nothing about western Arkansas. You don't know any of the people there. You don't know what the situation looks like on the ground, so on and so forth. How are you truly supposed to be able to go help with absolutely no information? Because packing up a vehicle full of supplies and just blindly driving into stuff is not always the most operationally sound thing to do. But you have networked with a group of guys that, does operate out of western Arkansas. They've sent you pictures. They've said, hey, this is where the damage is the worst. These are the things that people need. Since we're a local crew, we're going to set up here. Do you guys want to come meet us? And we can work together, do blah, 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 blah. That is good networking. And having, that idea in mind between group leaderships is good prior to anything actually happening. The other thing you got to be wary about is you don't want to go from caring about your community in your immediate region to becoming a national network. Some people like that idea, some people don't. I think movements and culture change and so on and so forth dies specifically with, those of us that align with the listeners, the majority of you listeners. National movements die because people do dumb stuff. You get infiltrated easier, so on and so forth, and things die off. Keeping things small, local, purpose-driven, close-knit community, that is what will make the difference in the long run. Everybody doesn't need to be under this giant national movement with blah, 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 following XYZ person to do, whatever. Care about your community, stay local, do that kind of stuff. Don't get too big. And don't chase numbers. Like, we've only got 12 guys locally, but if we merge with this other group, we'll be up over 30 guys now, and so on. Don't worry about that kind of stuff. Prior planning and usage of ground stashes, supply lines, etc., etc. So this is another good one, and I think in today's day and age, people always think of ground stashes as being you going into the middle of the woods and putting a 50-gallon drum in the grounds and filling it full of stuff. That doesn't have to be how it is. You could have other family members or friends that have agreed to let you, stack 2 or 3 tubs worth of supplies at their house, which is different from yours. You and your buddies could, come in together on 2 or 3 storage lockers throughout your region and stash supplies in various storage lockers, or small storage lockers, all of that kind of stuff. You can stage supplies, gear, whatever it may be, in multiple places. You don't have to go out into the woods and dig a hole in the ground. But you should definitely have supplies in more places than one, and contingency plans for that kind of stuff and how you may get to that. I can't get to this stash because XYZ happened, or I'm running from XYZ. So I need to go to ABC and retrieve whatever it is. You should definitely do that as an individual and then even as a group. Or even if the group plan is the individual's plans, whatever it may be. But you should definitely keep supplies in multiple places. How do we know when it's time? This is, I guess the question would be, when is what it's time? What is the event you're looking for that is going to reach a certain time? Are you looking for some glorious, revolution fantasy? Are you looking for SHTF and the grid goes down? The Russians nuke us, so on and so forth, whatever it may be. This is a question you just can't answer. I've talked to a couple guys on Instagram about this in the past, is that people's idea of how the world will fall apart, or what events it will do, or what the world will be like specifically after it ends, because people are always like, when the world falls apart, you need this, this, and this, because this is going to happen. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. One is that the world doesn't end. Just the world as you know it ends. The world has been ending time and time again for thousands of years. Just a new world comes of it later. So it's not the end of civilization. This isn't The Walking Dead. But with that being said, you have to think that everything that's happened throughout history has occurred slowly over time. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people get caught up in when you try to awaken people to the problems of the world or what's going on, is people look around and they're like, oh, I've got, my power's on at my house. I can go to Buffalo Wild Wings to get wings on Wednesday and so on and so forth. Like, the world's fine. Like, I don't get why everybody's freaking out. And the reality is that no empire has ever fallen overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. Rome didn't fall in a day. The collapse of societies we know it, the social norms, the economy, so on and so forth, is a very slow degrading or building process. And I think the times we've been in probably since 2011, 2012, maybe a little earlier than that. Depending on the context, we can go back even further than that. That the normals of the world is slowly falling apart. During the Obama administration, BLM kind of came to rise, and Antifa came to rise too with a lot of that. It kind of came from the Occupy Wall Street movement. And we started to see the initial steps of what would be the far left violence during those times, like especially in Ferguson, Missouri, if everybody remembers that. So we saw that during the Obama administration. And then we saw, those guys on the far right stand up at Bunkerville, Nevada, at the Bundy Ranch, again during the Obama presidency. And then later at the Oregon refugee, the wildlife refugee, later. I believe that was the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. Then President Trump took over. We saw, movements like the Proud Boys. Antifa got huge during the Trump presidency. BLM grew even more. And now we've got all of these left-wing, right-wing armed groups doing all of this stuff, and things continue to get worse. But everyone's like, oh, it's okay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Then we had COVID. Then we had the Summer of Love, the BLM riots. And now, we have Russia, Ukraine, and events pile up. And one thing I tell a lot of people right now is that the reason we don't feel the effect as much as the rest of the world right now in the U.S. is because, in reality, corporations are just outbidding smaller countries, corporations, or host networks, or whatever it is, for resources and supplies. We are beating out third world countries and now even first world countries for stuff because we have more money and we have the power of the world. Whenever those resources become even drier or cease to exist at all, the U.S. will begin to feel those effects. I mean, even look at in Europe right now. They were extremely dependent on natural gas and oil and all that kind of stuff from Russia, and now they're going to have a really, really unfortunate winter. People don't realize how bad it is in Europe right now. They may not be, fighting in the streets at the moment and eating their neighbor's dog and all this kind of stuff at this point, but the price of power, like electric bills, in a large majority of European countries have gone up like 200 to 400% over the past year. Imagine paying 200% more for your power bill right now, on top of everything else also exponentially becoming more expensive than it already is. So, those kinds of things slowly add up over time. And I remember saying it probably at the beginning of 2022, right before Russia invaded Ukraine. I was like, all these little third world countries are really starting to act up and whatnot. And, governments were falling apart and supplies was running out. And I was like, this is eventually going to catch up to more people. And then it kind of caught on to the more nicer countries on the lower first end world side, Sri Lanka and stuff like that. And I was like, starting to catch up with people. And you started to see a lot of countries in like South America start these heavily, left versus right political battles, and they started to run out of resources and whatnot. Argentina, all of these places, violence, so on and so forth, starting to catch up with us. Now, we've got Armenia and, oh God, I'm not going to be able to remember how to pronounce this name. Azerbaijan, maybe. The two A's are fighting each other now. You've got the issues between Kosovo and Serbia right now. Russia is still fighting Ukraine. We have the Taiwan-China thing. tensions are rising. So this is something we all have to be aware of and realize that it ain't gonna get better anytime soon. Just like it didn't all fall apart overnight. So when it's time, who knows? You'll know when it's time. If you're a man of principle and you are aware and you are prepared, regardless of whatever that event is and whatever event is to follow, you'll know when the time is time. Which brings us to the next question by the same guy, my boy Tyler. What do you do after it's time? Well, we're not trying to survive. We're trying to thrive. That's from Bear at Bear Independent. Your family will always be the number one priority, and then the families of those in your network are the next priority, and so on and so forth, and it continues to go more. It's kind of like a chain. You take care of your family. All right, my family's taken care of, so now I can help take care of my buddies' families. All right, my buddies' families are taken care of, and my family's taken care of. What can I do now? Now I can help my community, so on and so forth. But you can't get to that community level and everything that goes along with that without taking care of those other two first, which goes back to preparing now to, provide for all of them. But what do you do after it's time? This depends. Are you on the run from a tyrannical government? U.S. Are you fighting against the socialists that have started a revolution or whatever? What people want to talk about, if it's time or not, fighting, war, all that kind of stuff. War sucks. Wars devastate societies. They devastate families. People don't realize how much death will truly come from a conflict on U.S. soil, specifically if it's U.S. versus U.S. And I think that's something we all really need to let sit with us when we think about this kind of stuff. Is that it has to be an absolute last option, regardless of whoever the said enemy is and whoever you may align yourself with. You need to know that there is no other option in life before doing that. And that's not to say that it's never the right answer. I mean, sometimes standing up for your principle through those physical means is the answer. And that's been a reality throughout all of history. But with that being said, what do you do after it's time? You better get real used to, sleeping in fighting holes, not having showers, so on and so forth. Everybody seems to have this fantasy that, you're just gonna go fight, far left militiants in the streets from 9 to 5. Then you're gonna come home at night and chill with your kids and tend to your garden and do all this kind of stuff. That is not a real reality, depending on the side that you take, though. Given the way that this question is phrased, I'm picking up the context clues. Life is going to suck. Life's going to be uncomfortable, and you better get used to it being uncomfortable. Which kind of brings us into the next question, which is the long game escaping to the woods and the mountains, or is it taking back your home? And I think that no matter what, as a young man of principle, a community, so on and so forth, it is always your responsibility to fight for your family, your culture, your principle, and your home, whatever that may be. If the best way to do that is to run away to the woods and act like nothing in the world is going on and avoid those problems, then if that's what you see in your mind, then so be it. But me, in my sense, in order to ensure a positive future for my family, my kids, whatever it may be, you have to be able to stand up for what you believe and defend your home. You have to. That's been a reality throughout a lot of history. Good men and women have to stand up, and sacrifices are made. A lot of sacrifices are made. We look back to the Revolutionary War. There were many founding fathers, those that signed the original Declaration of Independence, that were captured, tortured, hung, families executed. Those that weren't executed had their homes burned, their riches and estates taken away from them, so on and so forth, and lost everything. Standing for principle doesn't come without cost. You have to be willing to pay that bill when the time comes. for whatever it may be. Now, if you live in a completely just, let's say, liberal city, like you live in downtown LA for whatever reason it is. Don't know why you're in downtown LA, but you're in downtown LA and you don't align with the 99% of people that live in that kind of area. Sorry, it's late at night when I'm recording this. If it's, we hit SHTF and there's panic and a societal breakdown and whatnot, is it smart for you to stay there and try to fight for your home? No. Get the hell out of there. That's not your, you may think of that as your home, but the people there want you dead. So you got to get the hell out of there. And there has to be a sense of reasonability to all of this. If you live in an area where fighting for your home is not an option because it's you versus 99% of the people that live in that area, well, that's a no-brainer. Go find people that you align with and that share the same sense of principle that you do, and figure that out later. Maybe you're all by yourself and you have 3 kids and a wife, whatever that may be. You never created a network, or you can never find a network, whatever that may be. Yeah, staying and fighting may not be the best idea, at least not at that initial point in time. You probably need to get your family out of there. Then maybe in the future something organizes, you go join, blah, blah, blah. Now you fight for your home. So, as philosophical and whatnot as we may want to talk about this, there is a sense of reality to all of this that you do have to keep in mind. Sustainment, hunting, and cooking gear in ruck. So this is a big one because when you think of yourself as a civilian, whether you're in the Minuteman side of this or the community response side, or you're just a prepper, you can only carry so much food in your ruck. And if you're living out of your ruck, you're more than likely you're not around your large stashes of food that you had prior to things going bad and why you're now living out of a ruck in the middle of the woods. So sustainment, gear and hunting gear and stuff like that is important. I personally keep fishing sets in my big pack, my sustainment pack, a ton of fishing line, this little box with a bunch of hooks, sinkers, little things like that. And I used to keep this little old thing of catfish bait in there, but I've since taken that out because you can find tons of grubs, worms, bugs, roadkill, tear off some meat, and you do plenty of that kind of stuff to go catch bluegill on the side of a lake, maybe catch a catfish, catch a bass, whatever it may be. But I like to keep a little fishing kit in my sustainment gear. Hunting is somewhat of an option. If you're living out of your ruck in the middle of the woods, more than likely a lot of people have hunted food to damn near extinction. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about, is that everybody says they're going to go hunt, fish their way into prosperity, but in reality that is not a reality. Following the Great Depression, white-tailed deer and turkey in the United States were damn near hunted to extinction. So you got to keep all that kind of stuff in mind. As far as cooking gear goes, definitely have cooking gear. In my normal patrol or assault bag, my 24-hour bag, I have just like my canteen cup and stuff like that. In the winter, I put my collapsible stove in there. But in my big sustainment pack, I keep like an extended cooking kit, which has like some more seasonings and stuff like that. And I also have this little collapsible grill thing that goes in there. I have an actual plate, like a single, plastic plate and bowl that I use. Is it more stuff to keep in a ruck? Yeah, but I like to think if I'm living out of that ruck and at that point I'm eating whatever I have foraged, hunted, or caught, on said fishing line, you're going to want to try to spice it up a little bit, because food in the field equals morale. Anybody that's spent times on deployment or even just in the field in general knows how big of a morale changer food is, specifically food that tastes good or food that's warm. People used to knock me for it all the time. I would always use my heater whenever possible when I was in the Marine Corps, and people would be like, why are you going through all that extra effort, blah 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 blah. And to me, just eating that warm meal, just sitting there, disgusting, haven't washed my hands in whatever it is, 10 days because I've been out in the field, doing X, Y, Z, whatever it is, just eating that warm meal was nice. Yeah, that I had to sit there for 10 minutes or whatever, and wait for that to get warm, whether I was near a fighting hole or I was, near my tent or next to a Humvee or whatever it might have been. Warm food was good. So, that kind of stuff, definitely put that kind of stuff in a ruck. The scale at which you do so will be completely up to you. If your ruck is more wrapped around the sustainment of survival and not the sustainment of necessarily like a fighting aspect, you're going to have a lot more room or be able to carry a lot more weight and that kind of stuff. But if you are carrying, 12 loaded magazines in your ruck to support the chest rig that you're already wearing, obviously, priorities start to take, okay, maybe I can't put this piece of cooking equipment in my ruck because I have so much weight already in magazines. So, something to consider. Snare kits and other stuff like that is also good to keep in a ruck, again, so long as small game is still an option. Integrating tradecraft into the stuff to learn pile. If I remember correctly for the context about this, it is like those that have skills in your group, whether it be like welding, mechanics, anything like that, integrating it into a training schedule or like a learning pile for your network guys. So this is something I try to do a lot with my local guys, is integrate skills that other guys may know into our normal training schedule. Like, for instance, we have a guy that is just our absolute car junkie, and he has put on a couple classes about vehicle recoveries and, the framework of vehicles and all that kind of stuff. We've got a guy that did a fitness and nutrition class. We had one of our guys do a gardening class, so on and so forth. You should be doing more than just the high speed, low drag kind of stuff. If, a guy in the group is really good at, welding, teach the other guys how to weld. There's so many skills to have, and the more people know, the better. So, if there's a lot of things you guys have to cover, have, one time a month, you guys are going to do something that's not firearms, tactics, survival related. It's just going to be a general skill, a trade, whatever that may be. And have those guys try to create some sort of source learning material for that kind of stuff, whether it's a PDF document, a PowerPoint, whatever it is, and keep that and put that into a bank of knowledge, a little library, and keep a ton of files on that kind of stuff. That will only help you, with learning content later for new guys or sustainment training, whatever that may be. Thoughts on teaching USMC tactics to my local guys over other doctrines or organizations. So with this, I think it's a good idea. I don't see why not. It's always commonly debated, Army doctrine versus USMC doctrine, or some guys like foreign doctrine, whatever it may be. And here's what I always tell people is, if you, as the leader of a group or a main instructor of the group, is knowledgeable on, Marine Corps tactics and Marine Corps doctrine and Marine Corps SOPs, then teach that to your guys, because instead of you trying to read a book that you're not familiar with and resuscitate that to your guys or having them do it, you have firsthand knowledge and experience on that, and that is going to be much easier for you to teach to your guys instead of you just, winging new stuff. Teach what you know. If what you know works, do so. Don't come up with bullshit to make it seem like you know more or to fill gaps because, I may not have, experience doing this, but I'm sure I can come up with something, Admit if you don't know something. If you don't know something, then yeah, look for ways to fill that kind of gap. But, if there's nothing wrong with USMC tactics or anything like that in comparison to anything else. Guys will nitpick and argue all day, this versus that, and, 13-man squads to 11-man squad and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really matter. That kind of stuff does not matter. If it works for you and things have been adapted to your group, your organization, then, so be it. And another thing with that, guys, is, and I talked about this in part 1 of the Modern Minuteman series on YouTube, is that, doctrine is not necessarily law. How to conduct an ambush. Like, okay, that's something you're going to want to stick to, the know-hows of how to do that. But, as far as like creating other SOPs, the organizational makeups, jobs and responsibilities, all that kind of stuff, use doctrine and military experience and all that kind of stuff as a guide. But don't be afraid to create or change things to better fit, the problem at hand with your group, or how your group is set up, or, so on and so forth. Be diverse, be creative, and be a problem solver. Don't just copy and paste. There's no reason to just copy and paste. Are you guys ever going to stop recreating accounts if you continue to get deleted? No, we will not. Something absolutely horrible has to go wrong for us to just stop creating social media accounts. I really like creating content in general, just aside from the business. I like creating content, and I like, sharing what I'm doing or what I've learned with other people. And, the other sense of that is it's a motivational thing. Business stuff aside, learning content aside, just sharing the experiences and the perspective of, me training with my local guys, when I was allowed to have my bluegrass page, that kind of stuff motivates other people. I've had tons of people message me in the past and be like, you've motivated me to do XYZ, or you got me and my buddies doing this, or we learned to do this because we saw it on your page and we did a bunch of research about it, whatever it is. And that stuff motivates me as well, even more, to continue to do this kind of stuff. So no, as long as I can, I'm going to continue to do social media, unless it just comes to the point where I can't do it anymore because the internet will not allow me to do so. And then last question here, guys. Do you have any plans to create more fitness content? So as I've said in the past, guys, I am not a certified nutritionist, and I am not a certified coach in a sense on the fitness side. I'm just a guy that's lifted with a lot of people, done a lot of things, learned a lot of things, and I try to present it in ways that, help all of you, specifically the guys that aren't, big fitness junkies. If you're a big fitness junkie or whatever, you're probably following a ton more accounts that have a lot more experience or have a lot more content on fitness than we do. But I would like to dive a little bit more into, the kind of avenues of entry or basics or so on and so forth of doing fitness related things and getting into programs, and also the tips and kind of stuff like that about remaining, healthy and functional, all that kind of stuff. One video I've been putting off for a while that I really want to make is all about, knee health and sustainment, because guys always complain about their knees, and I also used to complain about my knees a lot too. I still do, even though I'm young. But I've done and changed a lot of things over the past 2 years when it comes to my routine that has really built back my health in my knees, and it shows in a lot of the stuff I do, specifically like a lot of the heavy lifting I do, like my squats. My knees used to kill me when I lifted heavy on squats. I mean, it was brutal. But now I feel good. I feel strong. I feel balanced. So definitely, hopefully, we'll dive into the fitness stuff a little bit more. It's all so much. I got tons of ideas that are just constantly rolling in the head. I try to keep ECT really diverse because I think people should be diverse. As a prepared citizen, you should be diverse. You should be fit. You should be well educated with, small unit tactics, and you should be able to garden, and you should know how to break down your weapon and the effects of your, ammunition choice and its range capabilities and all this kind of stuff. You should be a diverse individual. You don't have to be a master at any one thing, but you should be, a good practicer of all. So that's kind of my mindset on all of that. That is all the questions, guys. I think we were just shy of 15 questions on that. There were more than 15 questions, but a lot of the questions, specifically on like comms and SHTF were fairly similar. So if you asked a question and I did not read your question verbatim, it just means that your question was similar enough to another person's question. I thought that if I answered one, I would answer the other. So hopefully you guys got some stuff out of this. This went a little smoother than I actually expected it to go. Once again, guys, thank you guys for all of the support that you continue to give us. Over the next 10 episodes for the podcast, I'm looking to get even more guys on. Shout out to all of my guests that I've had through the first 10 episodes. It's been awesome. Even the weeks after I've recorded a podcast episode, guys still will contact me like, hey, I just listened to this and this was a great episode. And like I talked about earlier, I want to create that library of information and resources for people to be able to constantly come back and reference or listen to and learn from, so on and so forth. So thank you. Definitely going to continue to push this, get more people on, share more knowledge, more skills, talk about stuff, the full shebang. Like I said, guys, keep an eye out if you're local to the Northern Kentucky area, the Cincinnati area, whatever that may be. Be on the lookout for classes. I'll post all that kind of stuff on our social media whenever that kind of stuff becomes official. But that's all I've got, guys, for episode 10, questions and answers. As always, guys, I say it time and time again, and I mean it. Train hard, train often.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and